When Richter came to Stockholm, Stockholm was not in his calendar like months or weeks before. They called him the day before, sometimes the night before, and said, he has a flight tomorrow to Stockholm, and you're playing a recital. These musicians, they were soldiers to the state, cultural soldiers. Hello, this is Martin Engstroem in Verbier, and this is Living the Creative Life.
Martin, thank you so much for hosting me here at Verbier, and thank you for joining me for this conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm so curious about the personalities of the artists, the many, many artists that you met over the years. You've witnessed artists who are full of vulnerability or self-doubt. What's your way of reassuring them backstage when you know that they have something to say?
I've been in classical music since I was a teenager, on all sides of the table, and I've been fortunate to build up my relationships with many artists, and I think it's this relationship of confidence, of trust, which makes the difference. That when somebody is in a precarious state, you can talk. They open up, they can talk to you. I'm not an anonymous promoter. I'm Martin for them. We have a history together, and so it's very individual. Artists are very, very different between. You have these young lions who love to be on stage and who would do anything to be on stage, and you have others who really don't want to go out there. And Clifford, Curzon, for instance, the great British pianist who I never worked with, but I met when I was a teenager, and I kept contact with him until his death. I was turning pages for his concerts. He always played with music. But for him to go on stage was like torture. His hands were ice cold. His nose was completely red. He was physically nauseous. And I asked him, I said, why do you do this? I mean, his wife was quite fortunate. He didn't have to make a living like that. And he said, I've worked my whole life to do this, and I can't just give it up.
And then I'm also fascinated by the idea that certain artists will have this suffering, but they do it anyway. I like this phrase that confidence is not the absence of fear, it's feeling it but doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. I've seen it in the documentaries, and also I had the privilege of turning pages for her during the rehearsals and on stage. But Martha Argerich, I've never witnessed anyone more nervous leading up to the concert than her, but I could witness this energy which she took and going through the door and sitting down and somehow powering through it anyway. Then I understood why she can mobilize through experience some energy that makes her hang on to what she wants to do.
She's always been nervous, and I remember once, 2001 or 2002, she had her comeback in America at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, I was there, March of 2000.
Okay.
Yes.
2000 it was.
Yes.
And I had asked her to record it, and she said, don't talk to me about it. So do whatever you have to do, but don't talk to me about it. And everything was fine until about 1 o'clock. She called me and said, Martin, please cancel the recording. So I said, what happened? And she said, Maurizio Pollini just called me, saying that he opened the paper and saw that I was performing and he was coming to the concert. And I said, really, Marta, can we just record it and we see later if we use it? I mean, everybody's here. And she said, no, I just can't take the pressure. Normally I would have cancelled, but since I'm doing this for my clinic in Los Angeles, I can't cancel. And she was in a state by the sheer fact that she couldn't cancel.
Speaking of other artists who were so nervous before walking on stage that they literally had to be pushed out onto the stage in some cases. Richter, for example, in his first American tour in 1960, he had to take tranquilizers in Philadelphia and New York. Sometimes they had to push him out the door into Carnegie Hall. What was your first encounter with Richter?
I heard Richter in Stockholm a couple of times. I grew up in Stockholm, and Sweden was lucky in that way that they were close to Russia, like Finland was, and they also had an agent in Gothenburg called Henrik Lodding, who spoke Russian. He was a good friend of my parents, and he gave me some pocket money to go to the airport and pick up artists and sort of be his right hand in Stockholm. So from an age of 15, 16, I met Martha Argerich, I met Barenboim, Jacqueline Dupré, quite a long list of artists. Richter, I didn't meet at that time. I heard probably every year a recital of him. It was a very physical way of playing. And I was never backstage with him, so I don't know how much he suffered. Just visually, he was very... never smiled. You never saw him smile, even after the concert or at encores. I remember I asked for an autograph. It was like... I was a teenager, so relatively young. My encounter with him was later in life. I do remember once when I spent more time with him privately, I made the remark, we were talking about pianists, and I said that he was a Russian pianist, and he didn't like that. He said, I'm not a Russian pianist, I'm a German pianist. Wow. So I know, of course, his name is Richter, which is a German name, but I never, went further in the discussion asking him what does he mean or whatever. I just remember this sort of remark, I'm not a Russian pianist, I'm a German pianist.
When people talk about Richter's energy on stage, what did they mean, and did you experience what they are probably talking about?
In general, when you saw these artists perform, you often had the feeling it was a question of life and death, that their art was there to have them survive. Soviet artists could perform anywhere in the Soviet Union, but hardly anywhere outside, except in Finland and in Sweden. Occasionally, they were granted to travel to the UK, very, very rarely to the US, a little bit more to Italy, because Italy had a communist regime at that time. But for other countries, hardly at all. Russia, Soviet Union, exported culture, and they were the leading nation in the world, winning all the competitions, and had the greatest artists. And that pressure was constant. And also how Großkonzert treated them. For instance, when Richter came to Stockholm, Stockholm was not in his calendar like months or weeks before. They called him the day before, sometimes the night before, and said, he has a flight tomorrow to Stockholm and you're playing a recital. So there was these musicians, they were soldiers to the state, cultural soldiers. And so there was, you never saw any joy in their faces. I'm saying globally now, but it was a complete different setup than artists today. You know, it was this seriousness, this that music. I'm not just representing myself. I'm not playing Beethoven for you. I'm here as an ambassador of my country, and I have to be better than all of the other pianists you have heard. And I also remember Richter, when he was in Stockholm, he always had in Russia you call it a politruk. It's a person who travels with him, who makes sure that he doesn't leave the country, and he's with him 24 hours. So he stays in the room next to him. He at all meals, at all rehearsals, he doesn't leave him. So these politruks, when the artists came to Stockholm, David Oistrakh had one, Gillels had one, Richter had one. We did a contract. Henrik Lodding did a contract with Goskoncert for a certain amount, let's say $10,000 for Richter, and that was sent to Moscow. The artist didn't get anything in Sweden, and in Moscow, the Goskoncert took 90% and gave the artist 10% in rubles. With Lodding, we managed to have a little extra envelope of money, so I could often give them some cash when this guy who was traveling with them didn't see it, and so at least he could buy some gifts or some things at the airport, perhaps.
What did you notice about any differences, perhaps, between the artists who had what I perceive as a hyper-confidence in what they were doing, Fischer-Dieskau, Karajan, versus the artists who were having a more difficult time? Was this a question of experience? Was it a question of internal factors, external factors, or something which I'm not even understanding yet?
Well, don't forget that conductors never face the public. They face the orchestra, and most of them have the music with them. So if a conductor is nervous before a concert, it's normal. He's excited. But I wouldn't put them in the same category as a singer, for instance, who faces the public and who has nowhere to go. Fischer-Dieskau was somebody I was lucky enough to spend lots of time with when I was young. I think his confidence came very much from himself. He was a very well-read, and he liked to even write books. He wrote quite a lot of books. He was a highly intellectual person who knew everything about interpretation, and everything he didn't know he studied, and I think you heard that in his performances, that every word mattered. He could swing the whole atmosphere on one word in a concert, and he often took a step forward, which immediately, changed the whole setup, and then he perhaps went back and put his hand on the piano and it became more relaxed. And then if there was a dramatic song, he walked perhaps a whole step in front of the public, and you were sitting like this. Even if you didn't understand German, you did understand.
So, having had this lifetime of witnessing both the great artists and a lot of the up-and-coming artists here at the Academy, what's your advice to young people who would like to build a musical life which lasts more than 10 or 20 years?
There's not one answer to that. It's really individual. I've been working on building careers for my whole life. For a budding artist, developing a home market is probably the best developing steps, because you need to have a home market. You need to be popular in one place so that you can have some concerts, you can develop repertoire, you can perhaps play with orchestras, you can get up to the next level. You cannot immediately conquer the world unless you're one of those extraterrestrial kids who are coming up every now and then. But it's important that you start in one market and then become popular there, that you have enough concerts that you can then cross over to other areas. And also many artists think they need an agent early on. I would say no, because an agent doesn't want to invest in somebody who has no concerts. So you need yourself to have a certain minimum amount of concerts that you can go to an agent and say, listen, I have these concerts per year, I can hand over the contracts to you, you can manage and get your percentage. But against that, I would like for you to, develop me in these areas. And so you can start a relationship with a professional agent to build up. But you can't do that if you don't have anything to offer. Everything is possible, all the steps are possible, but you just have to, take step by step. Competitions are often very good. I always say to these kids that go to competitions, do competitions, because it enables you to focus on repertoire. You are working towards a goal and with lots of pressure, and that's good for you. You might win some money, might pay some bills. Forget about the finals, forget about winning the competition, but just, see it as an exercise. So, there are many things one can say about the budding steps, but those three, perhaps it's the most prominent.
And finally, speaking of this home community that they build, what's been the most rewarding thing for you in the home community that you've built here at Verbier?
I remember once I was in Stuttgart with Martha Argerich, and before the concert we were sitting at a cafeteria with some of her friends, entourage, and this must have been 10 years after I started. And one of the kids said, Martha, what's this deal with Verbier Festival? And she said, well, it's a place where we have to play new repertoire and perform with colleagues we've never worked with before. And I looked at her and I said, wow, that is so nice that you say that, because I've said it to you, but I didn't know you listened. And the fact that she has had adopted that, and it's true, the amount of repertoire she learned for us, Haydn trios, Mendelssohn trios, Brahms piano quartet, which she always told me, I don't want to play Brahms, we're not friends. And she hadn't played Brahms since she was in her 20s. Brahms solo work, never any chamber music. So
she did it.
She did it. She agreed to do it, and also the four hands with Kissin, play with Levine, I'd never done before. Played with Gil Shaham, with Vadim Repin, with Lynn Harrell, with there's a whole list of artists she never worked with before, and she did it. And this kind of participation in the creation of repertoire and of artistic values is something which gives me personally so much satisfaction.
Martin, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for the music that you've brought to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.